I'd like to show you how I use the Chomas metal clay engravers. We have a sharp etcher now, and we also have a blunt etcher. So we have two tools that are very, very useful in metal clay, and you'll see how I use them. I'm doing an example where I'm doing a full fill, and what I do is I take a tracing, and then I fill in the internal parts that I want to fill in. Before I do that, I do a little internal offset, and I fill that in also. And what I'm doing is I have protocols for metal clay. I use red for cut and blue for etch, and I'm using pink for the blunt etcher. So what I'm doing is the blunt etcher is going to do exactly the same thing as the sharp etcher, only it's going to do it right a little bit further in. Because of the thickness, I don't want to go over that first line, and so I'm going to show you how it works. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the advanced cut functions. And I'm going to put my sharp etcher on the right and my blunt etcher on the left. If you have a cameo portrait, you can switch back and forth. And now I'm going to do my user-defined settings. And this setting is for etch 15. And I'm going to take the platform down to 4 and a depth of 15. And you'll see how deep this etches. And so this is not as deep as it can go. And then I'm going to take the pink, which is the blunt etcher, and I'm going to choose etch 20 for that. I'm also putting a little rubber band on it. That seems to increase the pressure with the curio. So I'm 5 points more in depth, which is actually pressure is a better way to look at it. And then the platform should be 4. Because this is a 2mm piece of clay, so I took the platform down to 4. And now I'm going to go ahead and send to the silhouette, and you'll see what this first round with the sharp etcher is. And I'm using the swirl fill from the Curio debossing fills, one of my new favorites. I think it does a nice job of filling. So here's my 2mm thick piece of Hadar's Brilliant Bronze Flex. And you'll see I'm starting with the pointy etcher, and it's going to really remove a lot of material. And actually, you probably could start with the blunt etcher, but I feel like the pointed etcher removes more material, so I like to start with that. And it also gives you a nice, sharp, defined edge. So I like the sharp, defined edge, and then I like it using the blunt etcher next to it to give a very carved look. It gives it a little slope to the sides. You can always go back over it with the sharp etcher if you want to, but I really like the way it looks. A lot more organic and a lot more like as if you hand carved it. So you can see that material, and you never really know until you're done etching what it's going to look like, but it's removing lots and lots of material, which is very, very cool. And I've sped this up for you a little bit, so we're going to go ahead and slow it down at the very end so you can see what it looked like when it comes out. Okay, so there's lots of material, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to brush it off. I always like to remove the material after the first etching. I think it gets in the way with the second etching. And there's a lot to remove there, and I try to save it so I can make some more clay later. And you can see the little swirls. It doesn't look solid. You can see the swirls there. And I've got a picture at the end where you can see it a little bit better. And so once I've got that done, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go over this with the blunt etcher, and you'll see a very nice solid look to this very deep etching. And it will remove a lot more material because you're flattening out all those little ridges that we had. So I'm going to go to my cut settings, and now I'm going to check the pink, which is the color I was using for the blunt etcher. And I'm going to go ahead and send it to the silhouette. You can see it already looks really fantastic. And if you want a pattern on the inside, you certainly add a pattern, but I think this looks really cool. You see that swirl pattern actually, the way it moves around removes, I think, a lot more material than some of the other fill patterns. And all the new Curio fill patterns are just fantastic. So I'm going to speed us up a little bit here so we can get to the end. And it's the machine is calibrated so beautifully that it goes in exactly the same place, exactly where you tell it to go. It's a nice thing about the silhouette machines is they're calibrated just beautifully. And you can see it's really starting to smooth out that edge. And it's a slightly sloped edge because of the way the Chomas engraver is made. And so now we're going to start to brush a little bit of it off. And you'll see what it looks like. And it's really a very, very nice look to the etching. Okay, now that we're done with the etching, I'm going to adjust the cut settings. And now we're going to go to cut. I am using a regular blade. I haven't been a big fan of the deep cut blade, and I haven't really spent enough time with it to make it work for me. And a couple times it's gone over my big pieces. So I'm going to use the regular blade, and you'll see later how you can finish off the cut with some scissors very easily with this particular clay. Also with the flex clays from PMC. I'm going to take the speed down a little bit. I put the flat platform back at 4, and I'm going to send to the silhouette. First I need to check it, and you'll see on the screen it will brighten up if it's checked. And then we're going to go ahead and send it to silhouette, and you'll see the blade cutting. So I have it set at 10. So in theory, it's cutting about 1 millimeter into this 2 millimeters. I'm going to send it twice. You certainly could send it 3 times if you wanted to. And here's what we have. I've dusted it off pretty well. And I wanted to show you what the cut lines look like and how nice it looks. There's a few tiny pieces and how deep that etching is. That etching is at least 1 millimeter, I think. And we etched at 15. And remember, you can go down to a pressure of 33. I'm going to play around with going even deeper because since this clay is 2 millimeters, I probably could go a little bit deeper. What I'm going to do is just take scissors and cut along that cut line, and I'm going to show you how easily you can remove this very, very thick clay. And this is if you're using one of the flex clays from Hadar or one of the flex clays from PMC. And I'm going to take a little ball burnisher. There's a couple places that I wanted to even out. I probably could have made it a little bit closer to the original lines. So here's where we started. We started with a 2 millimeter piece of clay. We etched it to get a swirly look etching. And then we went over it with a blunt etcher to get a really, really nice, very smooth chambered effect, which we could totally enamel and resin in.